That's in Jay-Z's. Jay was relaxed. He was enjoying the award show and his bottle of champagne. I was enjoying myself too, but that fear was still inside me. Jay-Z could never rap another bar for the rest of his life and he'd be straight. I wasn't there yet. I still had a lot further that I needed to go. When Port of Miami went gold in November, I finally gave myself a moment to reset. It had been a full year of nonstop touring, recording, and promoting my album. Weeks before I recorded Hustlin', my girlfriend Tia had given birth to our son, William Leonard Roberts III, Lil Will. I was there for the delivery, but I hadn't spent enough time with him since. I needed to fix that. I was blessed to be a father again. Toy was the apple of my eye, but I'd always wanted a son too. My relationship with Tia was a little more complicated. Tia and I had a good thing going for a while. If I was Biggie, she most definitely resembled a young Faith Evans. But Tia could be a hot mess. Not only did she and I fight a lot, but she would fight with my mama and sister too. She even got arrested one time for fighting Lastonia. Tia already had 2 boys of her own and a husband who was locked up in the feds, so we were never going to work out long term. But I was trying to do the right thing and take care of her and Lil Will. I bought her a new Infinity truck and made sure her rent and bills were paid for. In December, I bought myself a 3-story, 6-bedroom, 7-bathroom house in Fayetteville, Georgia. My first $1 million home. As expected, Atlanta had become the epicenter of hip-hop, and I wanted to be where business was booming. After I got settled, I got to work on my next album, Triller. I wanted to do this album a little differently. Port of Miami was deeply rooted in my hometown. Now, I wanted to go beyond the 305. The title alone was a tribute to my influences outside the city, combining Houston slang, trill, and Michael Jackson's Thriller. I also wanted to take my time with it. Most of Port of Miami had been written in the backseat of a conversion van between tour stops. The end result was amazing, but the creative conditions were far from ideal. I must have taken too much time because by the end of 2007, Def Jam was starting to get impatient. It had been a year and a half since Port of Miami dropped, and the label wanted to put some numbers on the board. We'd released a single called Speedin', but it didn't go over too well. Speedin' was actually a dope record, and we shot a video for it where I was racing speedboats with Diddy and Fat Joe. The problem was I put R. Kelly on the record. R. Kelly had gotten indicted on charges of child pornography, and with his court date looming, I think a lot of radio stations were afraid to support Speedin' in case he was found guilty. If I knew all I know now, I probably would not have put him on the song. But this was way before Twitter and social media, and I was pretty naive to how sick he was. I had another single with T-Pain that we all knew was going to be huge, but the label wanted to be able to drop Triller on the heels of the single, so the album needed to be done. Triller had already gotten pushed back several times due to sample clearance issues, and in that time, Tony Draper had dropped Rise to Power, a collection of years-old unreleased material from my days at Suave House. Draper compensated me for that, but Def Jam wasn't too happy. I was ready to turn in Triller too, but it was still missing something. Jay-Z hadn't sent in his vocals. Hov had blessed me with a verse for the Hustlin' remix, but I wanted us to have a proper song of our own. Jay-Z had stepped down from his position as Def Jam president, so he wasn't working on their schedule. But he wasn't going to let me down either. At the 11th hour, he came through. Josh flew up to New York and met up with Jay-Z and Shakir at Battery Studios. That's when he played Hov Maybach music. I'd gotten the beat from Justice League, a production team from Tampa. As soon as I heard the beat, I knew I wanted to get Jay on it. And I knew I wanted the song to be called Maybach Music. What first started as a concept for a song would go on to become a 6-part series in the name of my record label. Now it's synonymous with everything I do. When you think Maybach, you think Ricky Rose. The Mercedes-Benz Maybach had just beaten out Rolls-Royce and Bentley as the world's most prestigious automobile, according to the Luxury Brand Status Index. I didn't know too much about that list, but I did know the Maybach was the ultimate symbol of prestige. I've most definitely purchased a few Maybach coupes in my day, a 57S and the S650 Cabriolet, but the back of the Maybach 62 is where you want to be. That's the elongated sedan with reclining rear seats and more legroom than you know what to do with. It's got TV screens embedded in the back of the front seats, writing desks that unfold from the armrest like in a plane. The back seat is where it's at. Because the truth is, a Maybach is not a car you purchase to drive. It's a car to be chauffeured in. In my imagination, the Maybach became a symbol of the quality of music I wanted to make. It represented the amount of time and attention to detail it took to make something special. Music that sounded so exclusive and luxurious that someone could put it on in their hoopty and feel like they were just transported to the back of a 62S. The beat for Maybach music sampled a cover of an old Beatles record, so Justice League had to recreate the sample 5 times before Sony ATV and Paul McCartney allowed us to put it out. Then they added live instrumentation on top of the sample. The meticulousness that went into making Maybach music embodied the whole concept behind it. When Josh got back from New York, he told me Hov freestyled his Maybach music verse in one take, just like I'd seen him do when we recorded the remix to Hustlin'. He also said Hov had given us a little something extra to go with his verse. These 2 Australian supermodels, shout out to Jessica Gomes and Cheyenne Tozy, had been hanging out at the studio while he was recording, and they had some sexy accents. Hov sent them into the booth and told them to talk that Maybach talk. What is this? Maybach music. I like this Maybach music. Sweet. And then they both laughed. And that's how the iconic Maybach music drop was born. It's been over 10 years since that studio session, and I'm still not sick of hearing it. There's something timeless about the exchange. Jay-Z said something funny to me about it a few years later. By then, I was dropping it in every song I put out. I started laughing when he said it. Hov doesn't forget anything. I'm still waiting for you to thank me for that. Chapter 12. I have the gift of foresight. I can see the different ways that a situation might play out. Every possible outcome. But not every time. There are some storms you never see coming. There would be no sophomore slump. Triller was another #1, selling just shy of 200,000 copies in its first week. The Boss, my single with T-Pain, landed in the top 20 of the Billboard Hot 100, becoming my second certified platinum record after Hustlin'. Things were going pretty good. The label was happy, the fans were happy, the money was piling up. I was dating Foxy Brown, and that relationship was exciting. I'd had a thing for Foxy since I first heard her on a song called Touch Me, Tease Me back in '96. I met her on the set of DJ Khaled's video for Out Here Grinding that summer, and we hit it off. Aside from a minor legal issue, I didn't have much to complain about. At the top of 2008, I'd gotten arrested in North Miami after a traffic stop. I'd been charged with carrying a concealed weapon and possession of marijuana. The arrest was nothing to be too worried about. The weed charge had already gotten dropped, and soon the gun one would be too. I had a license to carry, but due to an error, my permit had registered as suspended. The case was going to get dismissed. The only part that was concerning was when my lawyer found out my case had been assigned to the police department's gang task force. During a deposition of the arresting officer, he was told it was because of my alleged ties to a gang called the Carroll City Cartel. Why was this case assigned to the gang task force? Because your client claims affiliation with the Carroll City Cartel and other known gang members. Where did you get that from? Other detectives. Is that pulled out of the vast universe, or do you have something definitive? I think there's some literature or video on YouTube that you can pull up for yourself. I had to move with a little more caution. I'd worn a Boobie Boys t-shirt in the Hustlin' video. Then I put out a documentary called M.I.A.Yo., counting down the top 10 dope boys in Miami history. I was essentially taunting law enforcement. I was still too connected to the streets to be acting so reckless. So I was being mindful of my moves around this time. I was aware that something from my past could get dug up and used against me. It just never occurred to me that it could be the thing it ended up being. Halfway through the summer, I got a call from one of my homies telling me there was something I needed to see. A website had published a photograph of me at a graduation ceremony for the Florida Department of Corrections. I was dressed in a correctional officer uniform and shaking hands with a middle-aged white lady by the name of Marta Villacorta. Marta was the warden for the South Florida Reception Center, a state prison in Doral. The article said the picture confirmed rumors that I had once worked as a correctional officer. The subtext was this made me a fraud, that all my talk about moving kilos in my raps were lies if this were true. Immediately, the story started to spread like wildfire. Report. Rick Ross worked as a Florida corrections officer.
I remember.
Rolling Stone. Rick Ross, correction officer, rumored confirmed. Double XL. Rick Ross's coke rap career imperiled by charges of law enforcement. Vulture. I'm talking about this here, as opposed to earlier in the book when it took place, because this is when my time as a correctional officer became an important part of my story. Prior to this moment, I thought of it no differently than when I used to wash cars, or when my mama got me a job for the Department of Health delivering medicine to people who were too sick to leave their house. When I dropped out of Albany State and moved home, I needed to get a job. I was getting money, so it wasn't that I needed the income so much as that I needed something to tell my mama I was doing with my life. If I wasn't in college, then I had to get a job. Those were the rules if I wanted to live in her house. The job I really wanted was to work at the docks. I wanted to be a longshoreman. I used to bug Gino, my tattoo artist and a good friend, to connect me with his younger brother Kano. Kano was part of a crew of Haitians called the ROC, which stood for Rich Off Cocaine. They were known for pulling huge heists at the port of Miami. They'd get tipped off about incoming cargo ships that were smuggling in some kilos, and from there, it could go one of two ways. Either Kano and his crew would hijack the freighters at sea, where they'd strip everybody naked, toss their phones into the ocean, and get somebody to give up the goods, or they would wait until the loads came off the docks. Then, disguised as undercover police officers, Kano and his crew would pull the smugglers over and rob them. They'd be in unmarked Crown Victorias, outfitted with strobe lights and everything. This was high-level piracy. I wanted to be the inside man at the docks, but you needed a plug at the union to get that job. I would drop hints to Gino to get him to introduce me to Kano. In addition to tattoos, Gino did custom airbrushing, and one afternoon, I brought in a pair of Timberlands and $200 and told him I wanted him to write Rich Off Cocaine on them. The boots came out incredible, but Gino didn't take the bait, bribe, as far as connecting me with Kano. He didn't want to see either of us get into any more trouble than we were already getting into. That's when I applied for a job at the Florida Department of Corrections. I already knew several niggas who worked as correctional officers. It was a common job for big, mean former football players. It was also an easy job to get because Florida has one of the highest incarceration rates in the country. Being a CO is not a job that someone with lifelong aspirations to work in law enforcement takes. My first 6 months were spent in the Department of Corrections Basic Recruit Training Program. The 540-hour course consisted of me taking multiple choice tests, completing obstacle courses, and learning first aid and CPR. The main campus of the South Florida Reception Center is a violent place, but they don't throw you to the wolves right away. As a level 1 correctional officer, I was assigned to a watchtower post in the prison South Unit. The South Unit housed 600 inmates, most of whom were either elderly or ill. After a few months in the tower, I was promoted, which meant I got to escort these guys to the medical ward and stand by while they recovered from various surgeries and procedures. As you can imagine, these inmates didn't tend to cause many problems. The play was to get transferred over to the main unit. Once I got over there, this correctional officer shit was gonna be a lick. The pay was still shit. My starting salary was less than $25,000. But this was where you could make money off the books by bringing in weed or letting niggas finger their girls during visitation. The main unit is where I would encounter niggas I knew, or niggas that Mike and Booby knew. Both of them had a lot of connections and influence in the correctional system. Really, they had connections everywhere. The fire department, the phone company, the police. For a while, I made an effort to perform the job to the best of my ability. I showed up on time. I logged my hours. I wrote up the reports. But that didn't last too long. The thing people don't understand about prison, whether you're in there as an inmate or a CO, is how uneventful it is most of the time. I'd never been so bored in my life. I started smoking weed before I went in. Then, I just sit there, waiting for the days to be over. I look out past the barbed wire fence and imagine a different life waiting for me on the other side. Something better than this. Something special. I never made it to the main unit. I think word may have gotten around to some of the higher-ups that I knew people over there. My supervisors weren't interested in transferring me over to the main campus, and once I realized that wasn't happening, I came to the conclusion that the job had run its course. So I quit. That was pretty much it. But the blogs were spinning this story like I was an undercover cop or confidential informant. I couldn't believe it. The attack on my character caught me completely off guard. There were plenty of people who had known about this. I never made an effort to cover it up. I used to pick up Gunplay after work to go to Earl's studio, and I'd still be in my uniform. If anything, Gunplay was jealous his rap sheet prevented him from getting a government job with benefits. I think he was still working at the AT&T store at the time. Anyone who was close enough to me to know about this would know better than to call my credibility into question. No girl had ever denied me pussy, and no nigga had ever stepped on my toes over me being a correctional officer. Because the moment anyone got close enough to smell the cloth that I was cut from, they knew that I was trained to go. This had to be coming from somebody who was close enough to know the truth, but wanted to sabotage me anyway. And the public didn't know any better than to believe whatever story the websites were feeding them. Before I had a chance to address the situation myself, one of the blogs put out a story with a statement from me denying the authenticity of the photo. My life is 100% real. These online hackers putting a picture of my face when I was a teenager in high school on other people's body. If this shit was real, don't you think they would have more specifics, like dates and everything?
Right.
I hadn't said that. I hadn't spoken to any outlet about the situation. I don't know if they made up the quote or if somebody from my camp issued it on my behalf, but it didn't come from me. What I do know is that those sites ended up taking those articles down. They didn't stand by their reporting. But that part doesn't even matter, because this is the moment where I made my mistake. Instead of setting the record straight then and there, I went and repeated the denial in interviews in the following days. The situation had unraveled so fast, and I'd been made to feel like I had something to hide. Everything had been going so well, and now everybody was saying that I'd been exposed and my whole career was in jeopardy. I'd never seen a meme in my life, and all of a sudden I was seeing these pictures of my head photoshopped onto the movie posters for RoboCop and Big Mama's house. I should have taken a minute to assess the situation and respond appropriately. Instead, I got caught up in the drama and reacted hastily. When another website dug up my personnel file a week later, it made everything way worse. Now, I wasn't just being called an imposter, I was a liar too. And that part was actually true. I had no one to blame for that but myself. The worst thing about a lie is once you've put it out there, you've got to dig your heels into it and keep it up. And for a while, that's what I did. The whole rap game was in a frenzy over whether or not Rick Ross was a fraud. Everybody had an opinion. Mano said he was disappointed in me. Ludacris, Fabulous, and Fat Joe came to my defense. Even Freeway Rick came out of the woodwork to say I'd stolen his identity. I was fuming. Even toward the people who knew what it was and were in my corner. Because why the fuck were these niggas even being asked to weigh in on this in the first place? The situation woke me up to the power of the blogs and the ways that they keep a story going. I was being used as clickbait. Money was being made at the expense of my livelihood.
Yep.
My frustrations boiled over at the 2008 Ozone Awards in Houston. Triller won Album of the Year that night, but I couldn't even enjoy it. I was in war mode. When my crew ran into DJ Vlad, one of the bloggers who had been pouring gasoline on the fire, he took a beating on behalf of everybody who had been out there throwing dirt on my name. Broken nose, broken eye socket, 7 stitches. The incident would cost me $300,000 in a settlement. I think all parties involved learned the cost of doing business that night. I would never say it out loud, but I was in something of a dark place. The energy around me had gotten tense, and it put a strain on my relationships. My fling with Foxy fizzled out. I had a falling out with E-Class and fired him as my manager. I severed all ties with Slip and Slide again. Those weren't the only people that left my inner circle that year. In November, I received a phone call telling me that Shakir Stewart had committed suicide. He'd shot himself in his Georgia home, leaving behind a fiance and 2 kids. He was 34 years old. I couldn't believe it, and I didn't even know what to believe. There were so many crazy rumors going around that Shakir had been murdered, that he had been living a double life. It fucked me up. With Shakir gone, I didn't know what my future at Def Jam would look like. Jay-Z had resigned from his position as president of the label the year before. As much as I liked and respected L.A. Reid, his support and guidance was never hands-on like Shakir's was. Shakir had been the glue that held everything together. Whenever Ted and I weren't seeing eye to eye, he would be the one to intervene and smooth things over. He was the best A&R I'd ever worked with. He had a rare gift of being able to connect the sound of the streets with the mainstream. That wasn't going to be easy to replace. Chapter 13. The week that Triller came out was the first time I heard my name come out of 50 Cent's mouth. 50 was beefing with Fat Joe at the time, and he put out a video shitting on the low first week sales of Joe's new album, The Elephant in the Room. That's when you know you're not relevant. When you got new artists like Ricky Ross, the boss, coming out looking real good with a #1 album. He's from that same little pocket out there in Miami, but he shouldn't stand next to that fat piece of shit, because you know how I get. You know how I get, right? 50 wasn't showing his hand just yet, but I knew a veiled threat when I heard one. This was his M.O. For years, 50 had been starting beefs with rappers and then going after whoever stood by them. And it had worked. He'd crushed every adversary to date. 50 had already used his feud with Fat Joe as a way to start dissing Khaled. He was keeping it cordial with me for now, congratulating me on Triller's success. But I knew if he was going after Khaled, then it was only a matter of time before he came for me. 50 was just going down the line. I didn't get back to 50 until the top of 2009. Coming off the correctional officer controversy, the last thing people around me wanted was a war with 50 Cent. We had enough problems already, and 50 would have all the ammo he needed. I was told it would be self-sabotage. But I viewed the situation differently. For 6 months, I've been on the defensive. For every DJ Vlad that got his wig split, some other donkey would pop up in his place. I was playing whack-a-mole. But 50 Cent was a different story. This was the biggest bully in the rap game. If I sat his ass down, then that would silence all the naysayers. It would be cutting the head off the snake. I put 50 on notice with a few bars on a song called Mafia Music, where I touched on recent reports that he had tried to burn his house down in the midst of a child support battle with his ex-girlfriend. I love to pay your bills. Can't wait to pay your rent. Curtis Jackson, baby mama, I ain't asking for a cent. Burn the house down, nigga. You gotta buy another. Don't forget the gas can, jealous, stupid motherfucker. Mafia Music, Deeper Than Rap, 2009. What? Really? Khaled said when he first heard Mafia Music. This is how we're coming? Khaled had just been named president of Def Jam South and taken on Shakir's former role as my A&R and point person at the label. While he appreciated me coming to his defense, this is not how he wanted to kick things off the first week at his new job. Khaled is a man of peace. Mafia Music was a declaration of war. 55 back a few days later with Officer Ricky. This donkey had some nerve calling my credibility into question. His whole career was based around him getting shot 9 times. Where I came from, getting shot was not something to be glorified. Hell no. We were the niggas doing the shooting. 50 was so fugazi. He had never gotten anywhere close to the level I was at in the streets. The niggas he came up under in Queens, they were the type of niggas I was giving bricks to on consignment when I was 18, and they were paying me back every dime ahead of schedule. 50 wasn't even that. He would have been a nigga I had filling my truck up with gas before I went out of town. 50 Cent would have been buying me air fresheners. But I knew 50 would go the route that he did. It was the easiest path in front of him. The part that surprised me was how weak the song was. Mafia Music wasn't just me sending a few lazy shots 50's way. It was some of my best rapping to date. No chorus, just 4.5 minutes of straight bars. So I was expecting the 50 Cent that ruined Ja Rule's career on Back Down. But Officer Ricky sounded like Candy Shop 2.0. The song was fucking terrible. Yeah, I heard it, I told Angela Yee in a radio interview with Shade 45 the next day. I was positive that couldn't be the response. Tell me he's joking. We're all gonna act like we ain't hear that garbage. We're gonna give you another 48 hours. Take your time. Go back in the lab and come up with something else. 50 realized he couldn't compete with me bar for bar, so he switched up his strategy. He pivoted away from the music and started coming at me through a strange series of publicity stunts. Right. There were Officer Ricky cartoons, sketch comedy videos where he had on a curly perm wig. I thought I was hallucinating the first time I saw him with that shit on. This nigga was Aki. I must have gotten under 50's skin by mentioning his problems with his baby mama because he started running with that theme. I wasn't burning my house down, but I didn't have the cleanest yard myself. I was in the middle of my own custody dispute. I'd just gotten deposed in Broward County Family Court. 50 pounced on that. He got a hold of Tia and paid her a couple dollars to go out and trash me in interviews. Then he bankrolled her so she could put out a tell-all book about our relationship. 50 had his own book in the works at the time. He was writing one with Robert Greene, the author of The 48 Laws of Power. I'd read Greene's book, and I didn't subscribe to all his teachings. I didn't support taking credit for other people's work, or finding a scapegoat to blame for fuck-ups, or posing as a friend to enemies. But I was most definitely putting a few of its principles into practice. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter. Stir up waters to catch fish. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. And crush your enemy totally. 48 laws flawed. My dog's above the law. Duct tape Robert Greene, make him read the Quran. What's up? Hood billionaire.
You want to sit right here or you want to go back in there?
After he got everything he could out of Tia, 50 somehow came into possession of a sex tape of Listonia and leaked it online. I can't say I was totally surprised. Listonia was my homegirl, but she got herself into situations like that. The only part that really bothered me was that it was going to affect Toy. I wanted to protect her and Lil Will from all of this. When 50 started posting pictures of him, Tia, and Will together at Floyd Mayweather's house, a line had been crossed. They say desperate people do desperate things, and 50 seemed to get desperate quick. Once I saw that he was feeling the pressure and had to resort to doing all this gooky weirdo shit, the fucking donkey was stalking Khaled's mother at one point, I started to loosen up. I'd been on the defensive for so long that I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed putting the squeeze on a nigga. That's when I became the aggressor. This is around the time I started shooting a lot of visuals with my videographer Spiff TV. We shot one for Mafia Music, and right after we went up to New York and did another one for a follow-up disc called Kiss My Pinky Ring, Curly. I wanted people to see what a square 50 was, and that I was more certified in this city than he was. Torch had the Bronx behind me. Kano had Brooklyn behind me. 50 could never come to Miami like that. Then I recruited Game, Ja Rule, and Fat Joe, who had all had their own problems with Curly, to get on a remix to Mafia Music and get their jabs in. Then I held a mock funeral for 50 in a music video for In Cold Blood. Family over the money. Money over the bitches. Money don't mean nothing, then why they calling it riches? I'm addicted to watches. Mama telling me stop it. Got one over on 50. 50, you better watch it.
That's my
In Cold Blood. Deeper Than Rap, 2009. Spiff was ahead of his time when it came to shooting videos with DSLR cameras. We started posting new content to World Star Hip Hop every other day, and rappers were coming up to me asking how I got Def Jam to cut the check for all these music videos and vlogs. But the label hadn't put up a penny for those. It was just Spiff shooting them guerrilla style on the fly. Soon, every rapper had a shooter following them with a Canon 5D. Meanwhile, 50 kept spending all his money. I don't know how much he put into Tia's book, but that sex tape with Listonia would cost him $5 million in an invasion of privacy lawsuit. I was getting approached by people claiming to have all types of dirt on 50 and G-Unit, but I just couldn't bring myself to pay money for some gossip. So I just kept my foot on his neck with the music and the vlogs, clowning him for how he dressed and his ugly-ass fake teeth. Things had been tense for so long, but at some point, it started to get fun. I was a student of hip-hop. It was exciting to be a part of a rivalry like this and have the whole game in a frenzy. I even tried to up the ante by calling out 50's big homie Eminem, but M didn't take the bait. 50 started to quiet down after his album got pushed back. He had been trying to recreate the sales showdown that he had with Kanye West a year earlier. He spent all this money and time trying to take me out with the hope that it would revive his failing career and build hype for his album. The problem was putting out sex tapes and taking pictures with my son wasn't making his music any better. Every single he tried to put out was a dud. Interscope had already dropped Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo, and 50 needed to go back to the drawing board if he wanted his label to give him a release date. The whole time Woodface and I were going back and forth, I had an ace up my sleeve. I had something that 50's money couldn't buy him. It wasn't a dossier with all his dirty laundry. What I had waiting in the wings was a classic album. When my back was against the wall, I made the best music of my career. And I was going to drop it when the pressure was at an all-time high and the lights were shining brightest. That's when I put the final nail in Curly's coffin. That's when I dropped Deeper Than Rap. In 2006, for the since-shuttered Blender, I wrote about Ross's debut, Port of Miami. Ross tends to sit on top of beats, insisting that his presence is enough to make a hit. It isn't. Ross's smoky groan made him distinctive, but it was also a liability. When he began to slide in the pocket last year, harnessing a surprisingly fluid flow and an impressive array of clever punchlines, questions about his past lingered, but they never overwhelmed. His progress manifests itself in surprising and even thrilling ways on Deeper Than Rap, his third album and easily his best. Vibe. His songs aimed at 50 Cent have, hands down, been sharper and wittier than those of his rival. And the just-released Deeper Than Rap, his third album, is unexpectedly fantastic, by far his best. The New York Times. Phony or not, Ross has planted himself near the center of hip-hop's orbit, and Deeper Than Rap proves that it's going to take more than YouTube beefs and blogger scandal-mongering to move him out of the way. Slant Magazine. Chapter 14. To borrow the words of my brother DJ Khaled, Deeper Than Rap was another one. But this victory was especially sweet. My third #1 album had come out in the face of adversity. I'd taken my licks, but I'd come out the other side on top. When the chips were down and the odds were stacked against me, I didn't curl up in a ball and hide. I stood tall and fought. Now everybody who counted me out had to eat their words. I felt bulletproof. That feeling inspired a return to my former moniker for the title of my fourth album, Teflon Dawn. But before I could get started on that, I needed to bring out my brothers who were with me back when I was Tef. I needed to introduce the world to Triple C's. The group had been on the back burner since my solo career took off, but with the success of Deeper Than Rap, I finally felt secure in my future. Nobody was getting me out of here. Gunplay and Torch had been waving the Triple C's flag in my absence and doing shows as a duo. But the identity of Triple C's was a three-headed monster. I wanted to get back to making music with Gunplay and Torch, but I didn't want to leave them hanging when I got back to focusing on my own shit. I wanted Triple C's to be able to stand on its own without me. That's when I added Young Breed to the group. Breed was 10 years younger than me, but his older brothers were street niggas I knew growing up. Even though he was a youngster, Breed had been rapping for a minute and people knew him in Miami. He was already in another group called Piccolo, but he had been getting in the studio with Gunplay and Torch, who both spoke highly for him. The more I found out about Breed, the more I thought he would be a good fit for Triple C's. He was the image that came to mind when you spoke the words Carol City Cartel. Whereas Torch was from the Bronx, and Gunplay was this coked-up concoction of Miami, New York, Jamaica, and Puerto Rico, Breed was a straight-up gutter Carol City nigga with dreads and golds rapping about Chevys and choppers. I also wanted Triple C's to have its own representation outside of my management. So I promoted Jeter K from muscle to manager. Jeter was one of Torch's homies from the Bronx, and he'd earned his keep hanging around us. Jeter was a gladiator. He was the one who damn near punched Vlad's eye out of his head at the Ozone Awards. That wasn't the only time Jeter's hands caused me a lawsuit, but Triple C's was a rough and tumble crew that needed a militant manager.
bottle? Sleepy. Come here. Come here. Come here. Eat.
Sorry, you gotta do something good.
What's up, Shaq here? That was one of the best offensive performances I've seen this year. If you can keep it up, I might even give you one of my nicknames.
Oh man, it comes from you, Shaq. You know I'm humble. You know, it's been a lot of extra hours in the gym, trying to perfect certain moves, add some different other ones. You saw the results of that tonight. But I do believe the best is still ahead, and I hope to prove that next time out.
I know you will, and if you do, nickname time.
Chase?
Yo.
We need you in the press room in 10.
Okay, got it.
Player of the week is a pretty big deal. What are your thoughts on outplaying the entire NBA for a week?
This is pretty much a team award to me. You know, everyone did their jobs, and I just happened to shine. But it could be any of us. But shouts out to my guys, man. Without them, I'm not putting up any of these numbers.
You guys are on fire. What's been the key to success the past few years?
Ted, you know, I think it's just everyone being in sync, I guess. You know, coaches pushing all the right buttons. We're executing on both sides of the ball, treating every possession like it matters. When you have this level of competition, there's very little that separates the best teams from the worst. So attention to detail is very, you know, it's major.
Yeah, good. That baby was hungry. That fat man was hungry. See, I was hungry, Daddy. That's why I was fussing. You was hungry? I know that's why you was fussing, baby. might be fine. You good?
Don't stop grinding, man. Winners win. That.
Come on. Damn, mate. Calm down.
This is where things count. Right here.
Come on. Stop. Leave that alone. Sit back. Sit back. Chill out. Come on. Damn, you nosy.
I feel like I'm stuck in it forever.
Night. Night. Focus. Look at me. Please. You're moving too much. I'm trying to feed you. Jesus. Please. Night. Come on. Sit back. Stop. Come on. Get off. No. No. Sit back. Calm your nerves. Chill out. Calm down. It's going to be fine. Alright? You're going to get to play. Eat. Come on. Sit back.
Come on, stop the work. Come on, back to work. You'll never get better watching other players.
You full? Sleepy. Full. He was trying to open his mouth. No more? See if he's not trying to open it. Come on. Look. See how he biting down?
Change your sock. You smell that? Why you standing here? Run the game. Hey, when's the last time you went to the zoo? Thinking of going there.
You full. You full? You alright now, ain't you? Want the bottle? Look. I'm gonna lay you down. On the floor.
Get to work. Here's what we're gonna do. Let's get to work. Here's what we're gonna do.
Just like that.
Get your mind right. Get your mind right.
Quiet.
Finishing at the hoop.
Would you stop fucking fussing? I just fed you, yo. What do you want? What? 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 Huh? What? You keep wetting yourself up. You gotta stop. Wetting yourself up like that. Chill out. Sit right there and calm your little self down. Chill out. Chill out. Here you go. Here you go. Chill. Please. All that damn whining for nothing. You just ate. Now leave me alone. Calm down. Alright? Daddy love you. But you gotta stop. Yeah, because he wanna be nosy. Sleepy as hell. I don't know what he wanna do. He wanna play, he wanna drink, he don't know. He's just spicy, bro.
Let's get everyone over here and get started. Here's what we're gonna do.
Yo. Dr. C. Dr. C. They hard, bet. Bet. Where you grab them at, bet? Where, bet? You gotta tell me, bet. For real? Hell no. Yo, they got different sizes? I gotta get a pair of that. I need a pair of that. I need a pair of that. They look good on you, bet. They look good on you, bet. I need to get a pair of that. I'm playing 2K.